Today I am here to discuss a little game that has the entire Zelda community on ropes right now. Since this is my last video before the fabled Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity comes out around the world, I was thinking about what I could talk about. And while my first option was the story, that would be even more speculation on this channel, so I thought I'd end up doing something a little different. Today I'll be talking a little bit about what to think about before you end up buying Age of Calamity. Some people don't seem to get the game, and while there has been a demo come out, some people haven't played that, and maybe don't want to. To save too many spoilers in this video, I'll only be using the Nintendo Treehouse gameplay of the first level in the game, some menu bits, and the original Hyrule Warriors game's gameplay. So, let us get into the video. So first of all, I'd like to talk about some common misconceptions with the Warriors games, and more importantly, Age of Calamity of course. The general consensus of the games in the eyes of the general public are that they are your bog standard hack and slash games. The sorts of games where your only goal is to mow down tons of enemies until you kill a certain number of those enemies. And I'd like to stamp out this thought from anyone who wants to buy Age of Calamity right now. Sure, the game does feature a whole lot of vanquishing and straight up destroying fodder enemies. The gameplay itself is still centered around that same core format, but it's not all just about that. Despite many people's belief, the game actually involves a lot of strategy. I'll concede and say that it's not the most in-depth tactical strategy game or anything like that by a long shot, but it's more than enough to get you hooked on the game's formulaic design. The strategy involved in the Warrior games is subtle but still effective. The games work in this fashion by utilising multiple different areas in the map that the heroes must venture to and ultimately clear of any enemies. Once a little bar on the side of the screen has disappeared, you must then defeat a keep boss. This boss will normally just be a more beefed up version of a similar sort of enemy. This means that the enemies must take that keep again to regain control over the section of the map. In turn, this means that the enemies can no longer spawn there and must walk all the way back. Without overselling it, taking a keep or a set of keeps can turn the battle from being a one-sided scrap to being a fair fight, to you dominating against your enemy while they cower in fear to what you may do to them. Another piece of the strategy in the game are the upgrades, also known as the badge market. I'll talk about this in great length later, and the Age of Calamity counterpart, but for now my point is that sometimes you'll want to kill a certain type of enemy, or you will want to destroy a boss, so that you can acquire materials that can then be used to improve the player's moveset, or perhaps even just how cool the character is and how they feel to play. In the original Hyrule Warriors game, I lost count of the amount of times where one upgrade made a character feel 10 times better than before. And of course, again, these upgrades can also turn the tide into your favour from time to time in a battle, especially if you've upgraded your character so that they could hold another health potion. Now, this seems like a great time to move away from how the Warriors game carried the strategy aspect, and of course move on to the upgrades. And let me tell you, in the past the upgrade system was nothing short of gargantuan. This seems to be scaled back slightly in Age of Calamity, so let's talk about it. In the last Hyrule Warriors game, the upgrade system worked in badges. Depending on how many rupees you owned and whether you had the materials for the upgrades that you were hoping to acquire, you could get your hands on a badge. So why did I describe this upgrade system as giant, massive, colossal, perhaps even behemoth? Well, the upgrade tree I've been showing you on screen is only one character's. There's an upgrade tree for each and every single character in the game, and they're all as long as each other, all requiring different materials that can take you many hours to grind. Well, let's reel back in for a second and talk about the game that we're actually here to talk about. How does Age of Calamity deal with its upgrade system? Well, you see, it's quite spectacular how they've managed to replicate an already amazing upgrade system and somehow improve upon it. If you're considering buying Age of Calamity, then you most likely played Breath of the Wild, or had an idea on how it would played. Each different weapon had a different attacking stat, so that you could make detailed and smart decisions when choosing the weapons you wanted to take into battle. Well, in Age of Calamity, you're given weapons, much like you were in the original Hyrule Warriors game, and you can then fuse these weapons together at a blacksmith to level the weapons up with rupees. The main reason to doing this is that a weapon's attack stat then levels up, meaning that the character the weapon's equipped to will in turn do more damage with each upgrade. In my opinion, this is a smart innovation on the original Hyrule Warriors game's formula. The other way to upgrade yourself is by simply playing with each character. This increases hearts and overall damage that a player can do. I don't really need to go into this as it's pretty standard to see a system like this in games nowadays. I would probably discuss the cooking and stable aspect of Age of Calamity in another section of this video, but I don't have the foggiest idea where else it would fit, so let's talk about them here. There are little quests around the map in Age of Calamity that signify that you can upgrade your character or world map in some way. The first way is of course with stables. You use materials that you've picked up in battle to use stables. These can then be used to buy different materials through traders after a few battles. They help to fill up the rest of the map if you have the rupees to spend on the traders' services. As an aside, you can use blacksmiths to sell weapons so that you can get your hands on some rupees if you're really that desperate for money, or have a fully upgraded weapon at your disposal already. Shops use a similar method to stables, but are open pretty much all of the time with the same basic materials to buy. There are actual quests that you must fulfill every now and then as well. By giving a settlement or a group of people some resources that they ask for, you unlock upgrades for different characters. Here's an example of a resource quest I've finished that gave me the prize of giving Impa one more heart. Personally speaking, I love this whole formula. It's basically the first game's methods revamped. Still the same, but given context and an awesome world map. In fact, before launching into one of the game's many levels, you can use resources to cook and give characters various buffs. A couple of these are on screen right now. Speaking of world maps, let's talk about the combat a little bit. Now, I think that the combat in the first Hyrule Warriors game overall was very fun, but definitely did have the feeling of a hack and slash game and could definitely get repetitive with barely any time at all. However, from what I've played of Age of Calamity, I must say that they've made numerous improvements on this area of the gameplay. It no longer feels like a grindy game. We were told by IGO Numa himself that Age of Calamity was made closely knitted with some of the Zelda team, and oh boy is that clear both in combat and in cutscenes. More about the cutscenes later, but holy moly, this game is so fun. And at times, while I'm running through the Hyrule field with Link, it really feels like I'm just playing Breath of the Wild with 100 times the enemies. And in usual Warriors fashion, the combat feels very empowering, so much so that when you encounter a truly hard to beat enemy, it can be quite a shock to your system. Even killing that first moblin in the first level was slightly harder than I first anticipated. From the characters that we've been given to play around with so far, they all offer very different capabilities. Link is just as he usually is. He's very outgoing with his sword attacks and just kinda swings. Though I will note that his shield surfing attack is beyond amazing at certain times, and his bow can really help you out when wanting to destroy red barrels. The next character that we've been given to play around with is of course the woman that broke Twitter a little bit, young Impa, and she plays amazingly, very unique, and not as much spam is really required depending on the attack you want. And I mean, you can summon a giant frog, I guess that kind of makes up for it. I think that all I want to talk about in the combat department is that so far the game is looking to be amazing in declaring one character from another with their attacks, as their attacks could show some characters' personalities. I mean, Daruk has so many characteristics on show when he throws down the boulder breaker down on the earth, doing heavy damage to the enemies. Flurry rushes return from Breath of the Wild, and are used to weaken the tougher enemies. They're hard to pull off, but when you do pull one off, it's extremely exciting, and of course it's satisfying to deal huge amounts of damage to enemies triple the size of Link. It also now seems that we can play sections as Divine Beasts. I have no clue what that'll be like yet, neither do you. But I'm also certain that it will be nothing short of epic. Speaking of epic, let's talk a small bit about the story and actual levels of the game before closing this video out. This story is already set to be grand, bigger than possibly any Zelda game to date. We're going to see the events of Calamity Ganon play out for Pete's sake, and from the sneak peeks of story we've had through trailers and the demo itself, this game will be far and beyond what Breath of the Wild did to tell the story of the Calamity, and that really is refreshing to me, at least me, you know. But before you buy Age of Calamity, story-wise, be ready for it to be emotional. If you were a Breath of the Wild fan like many of us were, there's always the chance that this could end in tears. And while that is a scary prospect, it is also a bloody amazing one. Emotion in a story from any Nintendo property has been far removed in recent years. So just know that no matter what, this story will do at least something, which in itself is a blessing. All of that story stuff works nicely into talking about the levels just a little bit. First of all, we have the actual side missions. You complete a certain goal and then you're finished with the quest. It rewards you with some new resources that can be used for that other cool upgrade stuff from earlier. These are a nice change of pace from the main levels and give you some new maps to explore. Perfect if you just want to level up your characters for a while. And then there are the main story levels, which are obviously the main cause of the game. The levels are amazing so far. You can see places from Breath of the Wild rebuilt with new heart and soul. And of course, before buying this game, you must know that IGL Numa himself said that this is the only game that will let you see into the world 100 years before Breath of the Wild. This could definitely be a good thing for many people, as Age of Calamity does let you explore. Koroks are scattered all around the maps and there are numerous Easter eggs all over the place. Now, I won't show you these Easter eggs as they're a joy to find by yourself, but the main takeaway is that there seem to be a lot of collectibles scattered around each map, making the game that much more replayable. Now, we should probably talk about one more thing before we wrap this up though. Adventure mode doesn't seem to be making a comeback in the next game so far. This mode was a section in the previous game that added many hours to my playthrough, to the point where I guess I've still not 100% of the game. I could be wrong and we could still see a sort of adventure mode, but it seems to me that the main game is that adventure mode now. The one thing that you and many others could be worried about, including myself at the minute, is how long the game will be, and I wish that I could give that information out to you guys. But apart from reviewers, no one has that data yet. So before you buy Age of Calamity, just be aware that it will be a long game, but there's definitely a chance that it's not as long as the original Hyrule Warriors. But I think that about finishes up the video. So, the question is, should you buy Age of Calamity? Well, don't let me tell you to buy it, but I really do think that it's one of the most worth games for buying this year if you are indeed a Zelda fan. So tell me whether you're thinking of buying the game, or perhaps you're one of the people, like myself, that have already pre-ordered the game. Whichever party you stand in, tell me in the comments. I'm trying to reach 500 subscribers by the end of the year, so I'd appreciate it a bunch if you could hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed. On your way back up, I'd love if you could leave a like. All of that stuff really helps me out. If you'd like to join all of these lovely people on screen, then please do consider donating to my Patreon if you can and of course want to, as it helps to create better videos and obviously gives you guys some benefits. All of my other social media is in the description, where you can catch up with me. Thank you all so much for watching, please stay safe, and I'll see you all next week after some of us have played Age of Calamity. It's happening!